Greetings, I'm Keith Klein, the host of the VentureFizz podcast, where I interview the most fascinating people in the tech scene. This is episode 416, and today's guest is Colin Raney, co-founder and CEO of Ray. Here's a did you know fun fact for you. Studies show that 90 minutes of strength training a week adds 4 years to your lifespan. Who knew? At least I didn't until I was doing research for this podcast. I have to admit, I have a pretty good workout routine while I'm home between cardio and lifting dumbbells, but when I'm traveling, forget about it. For whatever reason, I just have a mental block where I'm just not motivated to work out. This is just one of the many great use cases for how Ray helps. It is an AI native fitness app that behaves more like a personal trainer as it changes and adapts based on what the consumer needs by continuously learning from your feedback, preferences, and performance. Ray's co-founders are Colin and Rich Miner, who is a serial entrepreneur, investor, and co-founder of the Android operating system. The company's backed by Founder Collective, True Ventures, and other angel investors. In this episode of our podcast, we cover lots of great topics, like Colin's background story, growing up in Texas, and how he got his career started in software engineering and then product management, going back to business school at Carnegie Mellon, and how he fell in love with design, how he landed at IDEO and later ran the firm's Cambridge studio, joining Formlabs as CMO in the early days of the company, and the story of the launch of the Form 2 printer, meeting TJ Parker and Elliot Cohen, the founders of PillPack, and later joining as the company's CMO, plus the full story to their acquisition by Amazon for a reported $1 billion, all the details about Ray and a demo of the product, his thoughts around branding and consumer marketing in the AI era, and so much more. Okay, quick side note. It is hard to believe that we have over 400 episodes of the VentureFizz podcast. We have built up an amazing catalog of inspirational stories around building companies, and every episode includes lots of great advice to follow as well. If you haven't checked out our past interviews, go to venturefizz.com/podcast for the complete list where you can filter guests based on industry, stage, various topics, and more. Oh, and one ask, please share the VentureFizz podcast with your friends and colleagues in the industry. I appreciate all of your support. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Colin. Colin, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Keith.
I'm so excited to talk to you. We're going to talk about what you're building now, which is Ray. But we're going to talk about your background story and all the great companies that you've been a part of. But there was one thing that I learned about fitness that I didn't know until I was seeing some of the research that I was compiling about Ray and some of the things that you've published out there. So studies show 90 minutes of strength training a week adds 4 years to your lifespan. I was like, who knew? Like, that's amazing. So I've been working out luckily since I think freshman year in high school. So I played football, and ever since then I've always not just cardio but strength, like dumbbells. Like, I'm not at the gym doing heavy weights, but I still want to maintain a level of strength. But cardio, right, is so probably 4 or 5 days a week. I try to do 30 minutes, weekends longer. So I'm I am adding extra years to my life as we speak.
There you go. The phenomena comes in behind the fact that around your mid-30s, you start to lose muscle mass slowly, but you lose muscle mass. And you also, depending on your physiology, you lose bone density. That's what osteoporosis is your bones just start to get more brittle. But the studies show, and it turns out, the more that it's really about your body being under load. So it's that you stay strong by lifting things, by moving. And so cardio is really good, but there are these crazy predictors of longevity, like grip strength is one. And it's just that it's not, in some ways, the definition we have about strength training, especially for longevity, is a little bit different. Because if you can do 3 sessions for 20 minutes a week where you're lifting weights, putting your body under load and feeling a little bit of that soreness of your muscles, from a long-term perspective, it helps you stay mobile. It helps you stay independent. And the second part of the fact is because the older you get, the harder it is. Well, the harder it is to do 2 things. The harder it is to lose weight and the harder it is to gain muscle. And so the more that you sort of find yourself at a place of maintenance and you keep that up, then you really, really do a lot of benefit for your longevity.
And there's like the micro workouts, right? Like it doesn't have to be 60 minutes at a gym and doing things like you can do, and that's kind of like the premise of Ray. And one of the things I struggle with is if I am traveling, I don't know why it's such a mind block. Like if I'm home, I'll work out and it's part of my routine. But as soon as I'm in a hotel, I'm done. I won't go outside and run, or I won't use their gym inside. So I think, having something like this that would prompt me and be more of my training aid is super beneficial.
Yeah, I think that routines get so fragile, and I think the other thing that happens when you travel, you're overstimulated by all these things, so you're just more exhausted, which means you're a little more worn down, so it's harder for you to have your resilience, so you kinda push through and keep your routines, and so the hope is with something like Ray is that you build the routine working kind of with the experience. So then as your surroundings change, you're familiar with that experience and you know that, oh, we'll just dial it back and do some stretching today. But even you doing some stretching, even if you don't do strength training or something else, it still maintains that routine, which from a behavioral psychology standpoint, that's way more beneficial than like, you know what, I'll make it up when I get back and I'll work out 3 times as hard. The body just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I'm such a creature of habit. Like I like that similarity, the routine piece of it. So that's definitely a key piece. All right, well, let's talk about your background story. So where'd you grow up? What were you like as a kid?
I grew up in a small town in Texas. So I grew up in a town called Texarkana. It's on the corner of Texas and Arkansas. The town's actually split. One side's on Texas, one side's in Arkansas. Um, as a kid, I mean, I was interested in making a lot of things. I was did a lot of photography, a lot of video editing, a lot of playing in bands, making music. And so I think when you grow up in a small town like that, the main thing to do is like play sports. And sports are fine, but I just like to make and build things, and I grew up pre-internet, so the minute when the internet came out, that was just like that just changed everything because you could connect with all these people, you could make things, put them online, it was great.
What instruments do you play, or what instrument?
Oh, it used that back then it would be like guitar, bass guitar, stuff like that. It's been a long time.
Nice. I dabble with the guitar. Not enough time. I need to spend more time doing it, but I do love doing it. Okay, so you studied MIS at University of North Texas. How'd you get your career started?
So actually I started as a photojournalism major, and so I started taking pictures for newspapers and running around and doing all kinds of stuff, and at some point I was like, I love photography, but like I didn't love running around in like the 110-degree Texas heat with a tie on, taking pictures of people. And this was a moment. So this, I mean, I'm old. This would have been like 94, 95. And so a lot of technology was starting to take off and become a lot more accessible. And I was always really just naturally good at it. And so I was like, I don't know what I'll do, but let's go start doing more programming, start doing more building. And so that led me up to, I basically graduated a couple years before the turn of the millennium, which was when everybody was trying to work on the Y2K bug and all this sort of stuff. And so, um, you know, I think I was hired under the auspice that I would be doing that kind of work, but actually I pushed really hard to do a lot more web work and a lot of Java work because I really wasn't interested in the mainframe and the system stuff. And so that um that got me connected to a couple things and ultimately it got me I landed a job in San Francisco, and so I moved out of Texas, which I always kind of wanted to do. And I moved to San Francisco in the middle of the dot-com boom. And I think I got there a couple of months before the market crashed, but that didn't matter because it's just an area where, everyone's building things. You can meet tons of people because everyone's from somewhere else. And that was really life-changing. And so, I was a software developer there, building and learning things, and I did that for a while. And I think I was just pre-social web. And I was like, well, are we going to build web, order management systems? And so I wanted to do something different. So I went back to school. I went to Carnegie Mellon, and ironically, Carnegie Mellon is a really it's a quant finance school and heavy technology. And so I'd gone there because of my background. But when I got there, I fell in love with design and just started to I'd spend as much time in the design school as possible. And so really kind of balance the quantitative business side of things and then the finance and the making things. And that was right around the time when I guess from a business press standpoint, everybody was like, well, where's all the growth coming from? Like Facebook had just launched, like where's everything happening? And there was a lot of talk like innovation. Innovation is going to fix everything. Um, and no one really even kind of knew what innovation was. But at the time, this firm called IDEO was just became the poster child of innovation. And so I got really fascinated with, because of this design background that I'd been playing with, and because IDEO is a design firm, um, I just kind of did everything I could to get an internship at IDEO, and I was really lucky, and that worked out. And that kind of set me on a path of kind of business and design, and kind of, many people when they come out of business school, they go into management consulting, or they go into investment banking, or they go, deep into like product management in a big corporation. But I kind of ended up going on a path that led me more towards, still building things, making things, very entrepreneurial. That's kind of, sorry, that was a little bit, but that's the arc.
Yeah, like, well, just going through your background, I was like, okay, so it was Ernst and Young. You were a developer doing the what you thought was going to be Y2K, but it didn't end up being that. Which that was a fascinating moment with the Y2K, where everyone was just like paused, like, is everything going to crash? Nothing happened. Oh, okay.
All the jail's going to swing open. Like, it was
Right.
crazy. Yeah.
And then you got into product management too, which I thought was super interesting, because that's such a function that has grown to popularity now, but wasn't necessarily like a really known thing in the earlier
Yeah.
days of
It was
software
it was
development.
really different at the time. It was, I think then, especially because it was like PeopleSoft and Oracle. I was at PeopleSoft when Oracle bought PeopleSoft, so there was that
Oh,
whole
really?
that's like such an artifact of a different era. But in the Bay Area at the time, it was wild because you would hear it reported on every day, and you were sort of not sure what was going to happen. But product management back then was, you would take marketing requirements and figure out how to translate them into you know what the software should do. Versus now, product management is a whole different thing. In some ways, sorry about that. In some ways, product management talks about, this is the product, go figure out how to market it. So it's a very different time.
Yeah. And that whole PeopleSoft crew went off and started Workday.
Yeah. In fact, I was the office mate with a lot of the people that left to start Workday.
Really?
Yeah, because I worked in the PeopleSoft part that was more customer relationship management, because PeopleSoft had a lot of HR and finance, but the CRM part was the part I was in. And I was office mates with a lot of people that they're like, oh, we're going to go start this company with Dave Duffield. He's the founder of PeopleSoft. And one of the guys was the CTO of Workday for a long time.
Wow. That's awesome. All right. So your role, so you go get your MBA at Carnegie Mellon, amazing school. Uh, you see IDEO as this poster child for innovation and design, yet they don't really, what you're looking to do isn't necessarily what they did at that point in time. So what was that progression like, as far as like, what did you end up doing there?
Well, I mean, it was a relatively small firm, but just this huge name in the space. And they had taken on these huge strategic projects for a lot of companies. Like, what's the future of work? What's the future of email? What's all this stuff? And so it gets pretty broad and exploratory. And one of the things that they realized as these pieces of work is that they needed a strategy element of the projects that would help connect the work back into what the company did at the time. And more and more, as more and more companies were coming to them, they were like, we really want all these future explorations, but you have to tie it back to what our business does today. And so IDEO didn't hire a lot of MBAs. And so they were starting to kind of like trying to figure it out. And it was kind of a right place and a right time, where they took two MBAs. One guy, Tom Hume, he runs Google Ventures in London, amazing guy, and me. And so we were sort of a little fish out of water, trying to figure out how to navigate this world of design. Um, you intern and you're trying to figure it out, but really quickly, when we started, it was called business factors, like human factors. So these are the factors that you thought about uh, when you thought about business for a project. But after a while, we just kind of realized, like, no, actually, you can design a business. You can kind of figure out what's the most important thing, what are the offerings from the product, design those really well, and make the whole thing work. And I mean, it was an early entrepreneurship kind of thing. It was just, we didn't have the cult of YC and startups and MVPs and all the stuff. None of this stuff had really. Eric Ries hadn't written the lean startups. All this stuff was kind of before that time. So, like most things, it was happening, but it wasn't like categorized and named.
Well, what an amazing situation to be in for someone with like what you're looking to do, and help the firm evolve. And, fast forward today, they are, the most amazing design firm in the world. So what were your different roles throughout that time of helping them down this path?
So, I was a business designer, and then one of the things that happened was my wife and I had our first son. We were living in San Francisco. Her family was in Boston, and so we decided we would move to Boston, and I would work at the Cambridge studio. And then while I was at the Cambridge studio, I had a moment that changed my life. The guy who was running the Cambridge studio, his name's Dave. Dave sat me down. He said, "Colin, look, I have cancer." And I was like, "Oh my God." And he's like, "It's not a bad cancer. I'm going to go away for the summer. I'm going to get it taken care of. But when I come back, I want you to run the studio. I don't want to run the studio anymore." And so that was a moment where I was like, never thought I would get to do an opportunity like that. And so then started to run the Cambridge studio, and tried to shape what that was, and my background or my interest in startups also helped shape how the studio evolved. And so one of the things that was happening at the time was I was um I was a mentor for Techstars in Boston because I wanted to stay close to the startup community. I was really fascinated by it all. They wanted to know more about how design could help startups. And when I was a mentor at Techstars, I met TJ and Elliot at PillPack. And so because I was running the studio, I said, "Well, you guys are great. When you're done, why don't you come live at IDEO for 5 or 6 months, and we'll help you work on your design, and you can work on, all the operational things that need to happen." They had a pharmacy in Manchester, New Hampshire, and we'll see what happens. And through that, I mean, they learned a ton about design that changed how they thought about a business, but it also, like, we forged a really strong friendship that then later I would go on to join them and help grow PillPack.
Yeah, I mean, I've got lots of great comments and questions about PillPack, but your first step outside of IDEO was Form Labs, right?
So the interesting story was when I was working really close with TJ and Elliot, and TJ was kind of like, "Why don't you come work with us?" And I don't know why, but I was like, "Well, we're really good friends, and I feel like we're such good friends. Maybe we shouldn't work together." It sounds crazy at the moment, but crazy now. But and right around then, I also ran into Natan, who also is the founder of Tulip, but he's a co-founder of Form Labs, and they were trying to build out the marketing function and figure out how to tell stories and build the brand. And they encouraged me to come over. I'd run into Natan a lot of the time because I was doing a lot of work with the MIT Media Lab. I was on the advisory council and stuff there. And so it was just one of those moments where I decided to go one way. And then, a couple years later, then TJ was like, "Okay, can we now finally work together?" And I was like, "Absolutely. I don't, you I've been really lucky on both fronts." So that's how it worked.
Okay, so but Form Labs, right? This was 2014, and that's probably when there was Form 1 or whatever the first.
So they had come out of the really successful Kickstarter. They were still like, I think the thing that was non-obvious was like getting that a technology that's that advanced and that precise right is really hard. Mostly because once you start shipping the product, you have to calibrate it and you have to make sure everything works correctly. And I think they were doing the hard learnings and the fast lessons of like improving that calibration. And so the machine had a ton of possibility. And some of the times for a lot of users, it was just amazing. And sometimes the calibration was off. And so they were trying to figure out how to fix that. And what they had done was they'd taken all their design learnings and they'd built it into this new printer called the Form 2 that came out about a year after I joined. But that was the roadmap. The roadmap was always like, okay, we got in the market, we started, and now we've learned a lot about how to make the thing so much better. And they just made a huge leap forward when they launched the Form 2.
Yeah, and it's just crazy. Like now it's common. I go to a startup and I see a Form Labs printer sitting there, right? It's just a thing. But back then it was revolutionary. It was a game changer in the industry. And I watched it's still on YouTube, the Form 2 launch, and you were a big piece of it because you gave the demo of the product. It was a huge launch, which like I'm like, sometimes Boston doesn't do enough of that. Like, let's throw a party and launch something and make it well known. So, what was your thought of actually having that type of production behind a launch?
I mean, so at any point in any startup, the thing you're always trying to do is you're always trying to punch well above your weight. And you're trying to look for things that will create a strong signal, even though you may not have everything yet. And so an example is, we this was a time when Formlabs was we didn't even know it, but it was about to transition to more of, they always knew it was a high end, it was best for business executions. Like it's a it's a it's a B2B product, but there was so much consumer printing at the time, and consumers still love and use the Formlabs printer regularly, and so they didn't want to leave behind all their consumer roots, and they wanted to stay really close to users, and they still do to this day. But they also knew that they needed to crack the enterprise open. So one of the things about that was, how can you position or differentiate that printer and that brand different from what is all like a field of consumer 3D printing? And so in the whole point around punching above your weight, the one thing you can do with a product launch is you get to singularly tell your story. And then you say it again and again and again. And if you do it right and you have a lot of integrity in your product, then the media reports on it and you basically create a narrative around what you built. And so one of the things around the Form 2 printer was, make it, I think it was the most advanced desktop 3D printer ever created, which was totally true. And so, but by doing that, different from a lot of the hobbyists or the craft printers that were going on, you're really trying to separate it. Well, along with that, you want to engage the user community. You want to show that there's a lot of confidence behind it. And so what you do is you go rent a room at the Museum of Science in Boston. Why? Because Formlabs is about science. So it's all about that narrative. And then the next thing you do is, and this is all Natan. Natan was like, we need to broadcast this to all our users. So also equally big thinking. But then you're like, let's live cast it. Are a lot of people going to watch it? I don't know, but we're going to have that recording, and then that will be a live cast of the launch at the Museum of Science. And so then, even though you might not have a ton of simultaneous users, now you create media that people can go back to. Now, this is done all the time now, but in like 2014, 2015, it was just a little different. So we were just trying to punch above our weight to make sure that this printer that they had spent so much time working on, that ultimately changed the direction of the company. That technology is amazing, that it kind of, it had the confidence to the world that it could be as world changing as it was.
And the company obviously is amazing today, such a anchor pillar tech company in the Boston tech scene. And you mentioned Natan and Tulip, which is like, he went off to do that when they just announced a new round of funding at a, unicorn valuation. So just such an amazing team that has gone off to do extraordinary things in really, really hard industries.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the secret weapons about Formlabs is, so Max and David, they have built a culture that hires incredible engineers. And in some ways, I don't think they get enough credit for how much the engineers that start at Formlabs go on to create other high-end, like amazing businesses around Boston, because they both learn to be incredible engineers at Formlabs, and then they learn what it's like to be responsible and run like really scrappy, like high integrity businesses. So I don't often think they get enough credit for how much that the the fingerprints that they have left all over the ecosystem has continued to create Boston as a high tech area.
1,000%. So there's two pieces I'm going to add on to that. One, I had Max on the podcast a long time ago, and they've come so much further, but it's such a great story of the foundational years of building that company and how I think Mitch Kapoor invested in the company in the elevator. There's a whole story that people have to listen to. It's amazing.
Yeah,
so
it's a
I'll
great
link to
story.
that. And then we did a Formlabs alumni founder CEO list that I'll also, because it's like iBot and all these great companies that are like building are doing awesome things. So Formlabs is so critical. Okay, back to PillPack. So quick story. So I grew up in Hooksett, New Hampshire. Manchester, New Hampshire is where I went to high school. And my dad was an entrepreneur, and he had a leather coat factory in the Amoskeag Mill Yard in Manchester, New Hampshire. So I learned work ethic when I was like 6 years old, cleaning a 10,000 square foot leather factory with scraps and sewing machines and bathrooms that I had to clean. And it was like part of my childhood where my brother did it, my sister did it, then it got passed, the baton got passed to me. So anyways, I met with Elliot, one of the co-founders at Voltage in Cambridge, and he's like, hey, and I forget why we met, but obviously it must have been to talk about maybe PillPack was thinking about hiring or something to that effect. And he was talking to me about what the company was doing, because it was really in the early days, and he had mentioned, we're setting up the pharmacy in the mill yard in Manchester. I'm like, no way. So TJ was like, what was the thought there? Like, was TJ from the area?
So TJ grew up a family pharmacist and actually had kind of a childhood similar to you. I mean, I think back in the day he had like 4 jobs at the same time. Like he just he's just a hustler. TJ and Elliot met at, oh god, it's they did the mass challenge together. So Elliot started hacking medicine at MIT. And he and TJ were playing around. They wanted to do something, and they had this idea of like, what if they could package multiple medications together? And they're like, you know what? We'll try the mass challenge. If it goes anywhere, maybe we'll do it. Well, they won mass challenge, and then from there, it just started to snowball about what this could become. And so you have Elliot, who is a amazing product manager and technologist that can kind of get anything built. And you have TJ, who's a family pharmacist who actually has roots that he would go to people's houses to deliver their medications, and they had like macular degeneration. They couldn't see their pill bottles, and so he would label their pill bottles for them. And so what he knew was there was this huge gap from like just getting the medication to making it easier for people to take. And he also knew that there were these packaging machines that live in long-term care facility. These robots exist, but they're kind of in these pockets. And they kind of said, well, what if we took that multi-packaging technology, we built a workflow around it, we built a pharmacy around it. So then you just send us your prescriptions, we package your medication and send it to you. So it makes it incredibly easy to take. It was also at a time when there was a lot of mobile innovation. There was a lot of, startups and stuff like that, but nothing had really cracked like the consumer healthcare play. And it was just a story that people really gravitated to. They could really understand it, and that it just really helped, change the narrative, help build the company.
Which, hey, this is a great idea, but oh, wait, you can't ship drugs across state lines, right? Then they had to go regulatory to get approval to each state to ship drugs, right? Like that was a whole process in itself too.
So one of the lesser known things is right around the time that they were getting licensed. I don't know if you remember it, but there was a huge scandal in Massachusetts. There was a compounding pharmacy, and a woman had gotten a formulation wrong, and a lot of people died. And it was a big, big story. And so they were thinking about where to get their licensure, and all of a sudden Massachusetts got really, really strict on licensing pharmacies. And TJ was like, well, if it's going to be that way, I grew up in Manchester and we can build a pharmacy in Manchester, and boom, it happens. And so
I didn't
I
know
don't think
that.
that was like I think that was like a deep thing. It was just like what's going on at the time. You can kind of work with what you have. But yeah, and so that's how Manchester happened. And
So cool. One of the things I remember about PillPack, and I guess this might go back to their time spent at IDEO, was they took brand and packaging very seriously. Like, and I remember the original like website and the design of the packaging and how they featured the packaging. It wasn't just like, yeah, we're gonna, just ship a box to you. It was like, no, this is almost like an experience.
I mean, I have to give credit to TJ because that it was as the founder, it was his curiosity and experience and design and premium products and packaging. That's what brought them to the area. That's what brought them, created the curiosity, and that in some ways how he and I built a friendship, and that's where that all came together because I didn't bring it to PillPack. It was TJ being so curious about it that he created the space for it, he made the investment for it, and he made sure that it was always part of the brand. I think back when he was I think the story is back when he was in pharmacy school, he would also be taking, he would cross register for classes in design and things like that. So he'd just been curious about it for a long time.
Okay, so talk about joining the company finally as their CMO and then scaling it. Like this is a company that aggressively grew to massive scale.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I joined kind of at the beginning of 2016, and I think what that was about was there were so many things that were scaling at once, but it was about, again, trying to punch above your weight, trying to tell the story, but also like trying to explain. You're really trying to reach a customer who's not very online. And how do you explain the benefits of that product, why it works? How do you use, video and storytelling to really like show them exactly what it is? And so, and then there was building this huge operational component, which was both the pharmacies in New Hampshire. We also had a huge call center and a lot of operations in Utah and Salt in Park City. And so how did we build this whole story together, and just really trying to scale the brand and scale the business. And so we tried a lot of things. I think two of the biggest bets we made were to go um, do partnerships with healthcare providers, insurance companies, to make sure that like we could help people that needed the medication the most, and also to kind of run television ads, because at the time um, that was one of the easiest ways to reach our core customer. So the core customer for PillPack had 4 to 5 medications, and sometimes even 10 or 15. They would have vitamins added in and all sorts of stuff. And so I think that was the play, was kind of building out that operation, scaling growth and scaling the brand. So just kind of continue to punch above its weight.
And like you said earlier, like it would sort the pills into little pill pack, right? And then like you just rip open the package and that was your daily pill. So it was already pre-sorted for you versus the little Monday through Sunday
What-
thing.
And the interesting, the non-obvious thing about it was, if you had the packet and you tore it open and you left the packet around, a lot of people would forget that they take their medication. Not because they have memory problems, just because when you do it so often, it's not really something that registers for you. But what people found is they could see the package, so they knew they took their medication, so they feel good about it. So it became also kind of like a little bit of a receipt.
Amazon acquires PillPack for reported, $1 billion. So what was that like? You're building this hyper growth company, consumer, and then, Amazon knocks at the door and makes an amazing acquisition.
It was crazy, and there is a podcast in that whole story. But I think it was also that came down to also TJ and Elliot's vision of like, yes, it was multi-packing, but it actually wanted to be a pharmacy that was much bigger, that could sell you singular vials and all this sort of stuff. And when they got into the conversations with Amazon, it was very, very clear that everybody was aligned, because what Amazon was like, we want to have a pharmacy on the site. And PillPack was an amazing idea, but it also was only serving a portion of the total market. And the more that it served the full market, the more it would help everyone stay healthy. And that was kind of the mission of the company and the brand. And so they they Amazon had been trying to put together a pharmacy for a while and kept swinging and missing. And so they finally decided that um, PillPack was a way that they could shortcut a lot of this. I mean, they had licensure in 50 states. They had all the operations stood up. They had multiple pharmacies. They had figured this out. Now, they had not figured it out at Amazon scale, but they'd figured it out. And Amazon's promise was, well, when we put you on the site, you'll get all the distribution that you need. So all these television commercials that you're running, you don't have to run those anymore, because it's on Amazon. And so the more people know that they can just get their medication on Amazon, and it'll take a little bit of time, but as that happens, that becomes a flywheel that just allows you to turn on distribution and help tons and tons of people stay healthy. So that just seemed like an opportunity that was hard to like say no to or walk away from, because one, we would learn from world-class operators on how to build this business, and two, you just help a ton of people stay healthy.
And even today, I see the Amazon pharmacy commercials. Like they're still very active. So that must be very gratifying for the team at PillPack to be like, you know what, we're part of that. We originally built that, and obviously Amazon has taken it to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, and then that team ultimately helped inform the entire health strategy. So, in their time there, when Amazon was like, how do we do these various things? How do we go into kind of a clinic, or what do we think about One Medical and all that stuff? TJ and Elliot were driving that strategy. So they have they have a huge amount of impact on kind of like how healthcare is serviced in the US.
So looking back, like what were your takeaways, the biggest lessons learned?
I think at Amazon you learn a lot about process and scaling, and how, I think when you're in a startup world, you're like, well, we'll just keep doing what we're doing until it breaks. And then when it breaks, it's really painful until you can figure out how to redesign it. I think Amazon was a little bit better on always kind of aspiring to be bigger and scale more. And so they would kind of build an operation that would make sure it kind of stayed a little bit ahead of its of the demand that it was going to generate, because they were so confident that they could generate that demand because it is so huge. So I think one of the big lessons is like, how do you make friends with structure and process so it actually helps you get higher amounts of leverage. And then I think the other thing is Amazon, everything is incredibly like self-service. So on one hand, it's a huge company and you're kind of a little bit left on your own to figure everything out. but they also build it in a way that it's easier to connect with people, easier to do collaborations, to learn from people. So I think it's just there was a lot around just like learning how to navigate a big company.
And then today, so Elliot is building General Medicine, so he's building his next company, and TJ is he's a venture capitalist now at Matrix, right?
Yep. And they work together. I mean, those guys, they may have different job titles, but they work together all the time. So it's just a great working marriage.
Yeah, great team,
Like,
great team. All right, so what are you working on now?
so we're building a personal trainer for everybody. It's called Ray. Rich Miner and I have been working on this thing for about 2 years. And the general idea is that one of the best ways to help people stay healthy is to help them stay active and mobile and exercise and stretch and all these sorts of things. And a lot of the current market around fitness is around fitness as a hobby. It's for people who are incredibly focused on aesthetics. You see it with a lot of advertising, and but what we often don't talk about is how just uh, fitness for everyone, longitudinal, staying healthy, staying active, staying mobile. It kind of lives in the shadow of that over consumerized like aesthetic fitness, and there's tons of gyms, tons of equipment, tons of apps, tons of everything. And when we looked at the problem space, what we found is like, yes, there are a ton of apps. They are easily available. They actually have a really bad retention rate. They really don't help people a lot. What the apps are is they basically like they create more content because you're like, oh, if I could just get the right content, we would be fine. And that's actually not true. And then you look at the other end of the spectrum, which is personal trainers. So personal trainers are amazing. I think they have like 60, 70% retention rate. They're also incredibly expensive and they're not really convenient. So if you're someone who has a lot of means, you have a lot of time on your hands, you have a lot of money, like personal trainers are perfect. For a lot of people that work every day, they have families, they have a lot of responsibilities. They can't quite get to the gym when they would work with that trainer. And then if they work with the trainer, it can be up to $100 an hour or more. And so, when we kind of looked at this, and I think Rich is just such a technologist. He'd been thinking about this for a while. He was like, why I think with all the AI advancements, the time has come that you could build a trainer for people that would listen to them, that would learn from them, that would evolve with them, and hopefully help people get better habits. And through this, what we learned was fitness isn't a content problem. Like there's no perfect workout, there's no perfect exercise, there's no perfect anything. Fitness is a behavior problem because you need to do it over and over and over. It needs to adapt. When you have a bad day, it needs to just kind of back off. It needs to push you so you can grow, but it needs to be something that is just kind of generally a part of people's lives. And when you do that, you think about what a personal trainer is very, very differently. So then with things like Ray, yes, it will create great workouts for you to work out all the time, but it's adaptive. So then if you're like, you can talk to Ray. We'll do it in a minute, but you can say, Ray, I've been on a plane for 6 hours. Can we just stretch for 10 minutes? And Ray's like, no problem. It'll put a stretching routine together and you just kind of do it. So the other thing for fitness is it's really helpful if you can just turn your mind off because the more you have to decide, what should I do now? Is this the right exercise? Is this the right way? What am I doing? The more that happens, the better you are at that, the more fitness is like a big hobby of yours. But a lot of people, it's not in their lexicon. And so the more that you can remove all those decisions, the more likely people are to just stay mobile and stay active.
So I sign up as a user, and it's been a great experience because it does get to know me. So like I mentioned, I have my workouts, but I'm training for a half marathon, and I've ran maybe a 10-mile race back when I was 30, but I'm 53 years old now. So it's a different milestone that I'm trying to tackle here. So I was like, okay, this is perfect. Like I probably should stretch better or differently, right? So I was like, before my long run over the weekend, I was like, hey Ray, I want to do, I'm training for a marathon or a half marathon. I want to do, some stretches to help me for my run. And it was like, and I was like, one, I didn't even know, I'm not an expert on what stretches I should be doing, yet this showed me exactly what I should be doing. So I just love that it was personalized. And then I hit the button this morning just to see what it would say. And it was like, hey, you're training for your half marathon. So we were thinking maybe you could do these. Like, so anyways, it was just like, oh my God, this is like a personal trainer, like, which is the whole goal. So I was gonna say, so let's do a demo. Let's show the audience what it's all about.
Yeah. So let's see. So this is what Ray looks like when you open up. So you'll have a row of people across the top who've been active recently, so you can have some social connection to them. It has a calendar of your workouts and all the progress that you've made. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure that I keep this nice for you. But the one of the main things is that you can just talk to Ray by tapping the button. So on the bottom, you can tap the button.
Hey, Colin, how can I help you today?
Hey Ray, I'm doing good. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so I'm a little low on energy, but I want to work out. Can you help me come up with something short and good for us?
I set up a quick and effective strength workout for you today. Just 20 minutes so you can get a boost without feeling wiped out. Let's turn that low energy into a little win.
So it'll start the workout for you automatically, and then it'll kind of lead you through what it is. It's
We're
got
doing quick strength today. 18 minutes
there
of
you go.
full body moves to build strength,
It's
working
awesome.
chest, back, legs, arms, and your core all in one go.
One of the most important things for us about Ray is that conversational interface. So when you have uh, a tap and type software design, it can be great, but when you have something as evolving as how you feel or your health or what you know or don't know, you get into a lot of fuzzy areas. And so sometimes when you have a conversational interface, you can say, "Hey, Ray, I don't really know how to do that. Can you help me?" I, Figuring out what that is in like a UX flow is makes it actually more complicated to ask the question. And what you see with a lot of applications is people actually back solve. They back solve on how do I make this work for me? And what we really, really wanted to do is make sure that you could just say what you want, Ray could understand you and kind of take it forward. Now, we're early days. Does it do everything? No, but like I think we're trying to chip away at those use cases to help more and more things happen.
I just feel like this is finally the moment that voice has been waiting for. Like tech and voice. Like my wife, she now talks to her phone for texting or, directions. What like she's using the voice way more than she's ever used it. So I just feel like finally the consumer's understanding the power of voice, and the technology is obviously really, really good now too.
Yeah, I think you finally have something on the other side as an offer that's compelling enough to have people work on it. So like we've had Alexas for years. And so, everybody's tried it and used it. And what you're trying to do, as we talked about before, you're back solving. You're like, what exactly do I need to say to make the Alexa do the thing? And so it wasn't quite natural yet. But yeah, because of all the AI, because of all the LLMs, and because of the advances in voice technology, you can actually will ask you questions back or see the intention behind the statement. So you didn't have to speak exactly the right phrase to unlock the functionality.
Building this is hard. Okay, so you got to build the tech, you got to build the programming, the videos. So there's a lot to it. So how'd you go about getting started with the actual build of this product?
I think Rich and I made the decision when we started. The first thing if we believed in the product promise, then we needed to give people the best workout possible so they would stay. And so a lot of times when you build startups, the first thing you do is you go work on acquisition. You go try and grow it as fast as you can and you build a product after it. And because of this tech was so bleeding edge at the time, and because we're trying to figure out these things and figure out how people are going to use it, what we really started was let's build the best workout. Let's make sure it's guided in that way. Let's build out the programs. So it is, because the other problem is there's so many fitness apps that the bar is super high. And so you can't a lot of times you can build something that's a real scrappy MVP and you're like, well, it'll get better. But the problem is the comparables or the substitutions are so good that you really have to show up. You have to really punch above your weight is your theme, but you really have to kind of get there. And so we spent, the better part of a year making sure we had just a really, really good workout. And then we started to add all the interfaces around it. We actually backed into the voice interface because you have to build all the underlying functionality. So then when you ask the AI to do it, it can call the right functions to make sure that things happen. And so, that's what it was. We started with a group of 3 or 4 senior engineers. One was a machine learning researcher that works on computer vision because Ray can count your reps and does a lot of stuff with the camera, and a product designer. And we just locked ourselves up and just like slowly started chipping away at the core fundamental architecture. Um, what's been amazing that's happened over the time we build it is how much that AI assisted coding and Claude code and all that stuff has kind of come into fashion. So that I really wonder where we would be if we started now versus if we'd started a little while ago, because we definitely suffered a lot of like um, early learning tacks around like voice AI, making it faster, understanding how all this stuff worked, because there's just no examples of it on the market.
It's just kind of dawning on me right now because like there's all these with the platform shift to AI, there's all these companies that are like in panic mode because they were built in pre ChatGPT moment and they're now legacy technology. Even though maybe they raised funding like 4 years ago, it's still like now they're like legacy. So you built out an AI native fitness training platform, right? Like, and that's hard for the other incumbents to replicate.
I mean, it's a very competitive space. I think let's go back to the Form Labs example. You need to figure out how to tell that story so much that people can understand why it's different and why it's valuable. And so then they can see the value in it and try it. I mean, what we find is if people try Ray, they work out with Ray. If they work out with Ray if they work out with Ray 2 times, they'll work out with it 10 times. Because when you do the workouts and you've done this, it kind of just guides you through and it tells you what to do. So you take all the decision out of it. It's really hard to explain to somebody, hey, you really want this trainer because you don't have to decide anything anymore. Like experientially, you feel it. It works. But like we haven't quite found the exact right messaging to help people truly understand what that means. You kind of have to experience it. And so I think, yeah, we are very much AI native. We're very much AI native trainer that doesn't exist. But I think it's a different way for people to engage with fitness. And so like we're leading, but we're also kind of trying to pull the market with us. And it's no one is a for sure winner. It's just sort of like trying to figure it out. I think you have a lot of other really big companies adding AI features that it doesn't feel the same, but that's the game. And so, we're trying to, I think it's the other thing that's tough is people don't always, this is very PillPack. When I was at PillPack, I would say, look, people don't have a pharmacy problem. As long as they get their medication, that's all they care about. And so running a pharmacy is a little bit like running a liquor store. Like if you can get what you want, you kind of don't really care which store you go to until you can tell the story around why PillPack helps you and takes, saves you time and keeps you healthy and takes everything and makes it easy. We're in the same place with Ray and helping people understand like, no, you kind of take all these decisions off the table. They make it easy and help you build a better routine, stay healthy, and it's easy to stay healthy. And so like we're just in that moment of trying to make sure that product promise is real and strong every time, but also being able to tell it to people so much that they will value it and they will try it.
All right. So you did talk about it's a crowded category. People tend to be, creature of habit, new behaviors. So what have you been seeing? Like what has been working customer acquisition wise? Is it word of mouth? Has it been influencers? Like there's a whole myriad of ways that, people find acquisition these days.
Yeah, I mean, we do everything. I think really what resonates is when people can see that they can talk to it and tell it whatever they want. In some ways, that kind of ignites their imagination because they're like, oh well, I have a tricky knee. Maybe it will help program around my knee because I'm always worried about it with other things. And so I think what we've seen for acquisition is the more we can put it in context of what the user needs, you create kind of an immediate interest because all the other fitness apps and software, it's very much like we do it this way. If you do it this way, you will have abs in 5 minutes or whatever unrealistic claim it is. And so for the people that we find for the people that work the best for Ray are sort of 35 and older, skewing more female, but they're people that they have a serious time crunch in their life. They have kids, they have responsibilities, they have obligations, but they'd like to stay active. They know how much better they feel if they work out or they do a little strength training. They know how it improves their mood, reduces their stress, improves their sleep. They just like they've been around long enough. They know this, but everything else is too hard to kind of fit into their life. And the more we can tell the story around how that happens, the more they can kind of see like, oh, this could be something that helps me. And so that's really how, more so than the channel specifically, that's how we found people.
And are you the monetization piece? Is this going to be like a monthly, annual type of subscription
it's
model?
it's a subscription, but I think the way we think about it is, God, if a trainer is like $500 to $1,500 a month and raise in the $20 a month range, that's an incredible value. And so you live in a hard world where people don't pay for apps, and they, like, it's a little bit of a hesitance. What we're really trying to explain, or really want to highlight, is how much that little amount of money can unlock a lot of longevity and a lot of better life for everyone.
So you raise capital from Founder Collective, True Ventures, and others. Like, what's the team currently? You mentioned the initial, team of engineers that are building it. Is that still what the case is, or are there plans for more hiring, or what's the latest?
Yeah, we'll continue to grow. We'll continue to, like, hire and build the company. We're 7 people now, 4 engineers, 1 product designer, 1 marketer, and me. And I think we're now going through this interesting calculation of, back 10 years ago at this phase, you just ramp the team. That's how it works. But now we're learning to be so much higher leverage with AI and all the things that we need, that we can build a really, like, a high trust, high skilled team. And we can be really, really effective without having to go just like gangbusters on the hiring, which is, it's an interesting way to kind of like process things and work. It's just kind of like the world is wild and evolving. You're trying to learn as you kind of go.
It's amazing. Like, I just, from dealing with all the startups that I do, how much people can build with a very minimal team. It's just night and day compared to the years of PeopleSoft.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
All right. So when you think about branding and marketing, right? Like there's a lot that's evolving in today's consumer mindset of attention just dwindling day by day. The AI era, and consumers understand AI now because of ChatGPT. And so when you think about marketing, how has that evolved in terms of reaching, a consumer audience?
so different. I mean, I think, y- y- it's kind of been true for a long time, but the sooner you can start to create an impression or a relationship with the customer, the more important it is, the more it becomes a considered purchase. So, what you see a lot in this space is you kind of see influencers used in 2 different ways. One, you see influencers used for just sheer blast radius. The more influencers I can get to talk about my thing, the more likely you are there. That is a strategy. The problem with that strategy is it's just, then the customer signs up for the product. They don't really know why they're there. They don't really know what it does for them, and so you don't really have great retention. And so what we're trying to look at are ways to sort of like be there early and create relationships with customers, work with influencers so people can see how they use the product, why they value it, and that helps them, kind of find their way to Ray. I think the other thing that we believe a lot is that this our customer specifically is trying to solve a problem, and then if we can solve that problem, they would actually like to connect with their friends on the app. It's not a huge social platform, but smaller groups and ways that people like, look, I've been trying to figure out, how to deal with staying mobile and staying, active. And this works for me. It's really easy. And so kind of like you're a little bit back to some old like referral marketing. I think always what is, especially with marketing, what felt like the most oldest idea in the world comes back again. And so I think influencers, referrals, this sort of stuff, just kind of storytelling around the product. That's kind of the most important things for us.
It's interesting, like, you think about community, right? So do you build a Ray community that's large, or because there is the social component to your app where it's like you can follow, and so I have a Peloton, and I think I follow maybe 3, 4 people. So it's not like a thing that I'm looking for in it, but I could see how that could be an incentive of, because you do get a pop-up that says, hey, your friend is working out right now, right? Or you see them on the leaderboard or something like that. Which sometimes has its incentives as a consumer, like, oh, like I need to get on it. My buddy's doing it.
Peloton's a great example because if you watch what they did, and they've been really masters at what they've done. They definitely have social on in their ecosystem on their devices, but by large, the largest amount of their community and their social lives off platform. It lives on Facebook, it lives in other places, and it's actually run by their users. And so I think when that happens, you start to get more niche communities. And the thing about those niche communities is they're more relevant and they're more engaging to people. And so I think that's another that will be definitely where the world has to go, because I think because AI is going to blow the doors off all personalization and everybody's going to kind of want it in their way and want to have the conversations that they have. I think what we're trying to think about is like community and fitness is they're very connected. But community that only revolves around the brand or is monolithic and you sort of have to like a Weight Watchers community, like you have to go to it and follow their dogma. It doesn't really work that way. And so I think it's very much like as we personify Ray as a personal trainer, it's like, how can Ray be in your chat with you and your friends? How can Ray show up in ways that's helpful without having everybody having to circle around Ray and celebrate that? Because it feels like an old idea.
3 apps you can't live without. Well, actually, I gotta include Ray. I can't include Ray. Email, Slack, or calendar.
The apps I can't live without, that would be like PostHog, which is like our analytics platform. I live in it.
Yeah, I'm sure you're like looking at that all the time.
Like Claude and Claude Code, it's the best. And then probably CapCut, which is like a video editing software. It's basically like, it's what everybody, if you're going to make a TikTok, it's what you're going to edit it on because it contains all the memes and the stickers and everything else. All three of those just in different ways allow me to work really fast. They're really sharp and they're really sort of like feature focused. And so, they're very different. Like you got a high-end analytics package, you got like an LLM, and then you got a video editing software, but those are probably my three.
Well, you've been a master of creating content. So CapCut is what you're using to create all that then. I was wondering.
Well, that's like an experiment, right? Like, so that's my daily humiliation ritual, which is sort of like, I make these short videos and I kind of made a promise to myself I was going to do it 100 times and see what I learned. Cause I don't really think it's probably, I think very much like you creating VentureFizz. You probably like didn't know what you wanted to do. You didn't know what it was when you started, but you're like, if I go on this journey, I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to meet a lot of people and things are going to happen. And so I'm very much on the beginning of that journey. Like I don't have any desire to be a content creator, but I know that it's my responsibility to kind of raise message to the world. And the more I practice it and the more I tell it, the sharper that's going to get, the more people I'm going to get, the more small A/B testing I'm doing. And those get posted like simultaneously, probably not for the best idea, but simultaneously we post them to like Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn. So some days it lands on LinkedIn and you're like, why is this here? And some days it lands on TikTok and you're like, why is this here? So like, it's always a little bit of a revolving. I probably have too many variables going on in this experiment, but that's what's going on.
Well, it's interesting because yes, I live in the world of content creation, and I was just curious as to how you were creating it. So I'm not a CapCut user, but I'm certainly familiar with it.
I think I'd be using Premiere if I was better at it. I just sort of like, I have to work really fast. And so I said, well, because I do all my own stunts, right? So if you're like, okay, we're going to do this every day. This can't take more than 45 minutes to an hour, or you've given it way too much time. And so it was just a constraint exercise. I'm always trying to get it tighter and tighter.
Well, just not that I'm trying to promote their own product, but I am a fan. So Riverside that we're on right now, like does an amazing job with the content and the magic clips it spits out. It's really good. And I wish I need a social media editor, content person that would help me distribute all these clips because they're there. They're just waiting. I just don't have time to actually add them to LinkedIn.
There's so many, there are these clipping services. Like, I know you know this, like this is very much a thing. You just got to find somebody who they clip all day and that's what they do. And I don't think it costs a lot, but there's a little bit of upside on how well they do, how much they get promoted, pay for promotion.
All right. How about a podcast or book recommendation for entrepreneurs?
Podcasts are like TBPN, TBPN?
Is that the newish one or no? Like the one about the startup news?
Yeah, I mean it's like if CNN and TechCrunch did a thing. Like
it's the two guys they're right talking.
Amazing.
Yes.
And I mean I think they it's like 3 hours long. So we don't listen to the whole thing. Their insights are really sharp. They're really fast. They kind of keep it moving and it's very, very current. So for me, when I can't spend a lot of my time like keeping up with the news, but if I'm driving home and I can listen to a little bit of it, I can stay pretty current. So that one's a huge one. I love the Founders podcast with David Senra. It's really great around like kind of the history of how things are made. And I'm always a big Invest Like the Best fan. Like Patrick O'Shaughnessy is really great. So those are my podcasts. Yeah.
Great recommendations. I don't think anyone's mentioned those three yet. So, all right, what do you like to do for fun outside of work?
There, there is no outside of work.
That's
I have two boys. I have a 14-year-old and an 18-year-old. My older son's like a track star. He's like a big pole vaulter. And so I love supporting him and seeing him grow and go through that whole journey. And, I love music, love travel and go catch up with old friends and just kind of just try and go on as many adventures as you can.
don't think there's a harder sport than the pole vault.
You know, he taught me this lesson because his whole thing was like, look, because I asked him about it once and he's like, listen, every time I do it, you fail. He was like, you keep going until you fail. And he was like, if you do good, they raise the bar and you do it again and they raise the bar. And until at some point competition does not end until everyone fails. And so it's a very unique thing. And the other thing that's very unique about it is like, because like you're running down with this pole and you like throw yourself over this bar, there's a lot of muscle memory that happens there. Like it's not, they know what they're doing and it's very pattern matched, but it's also like, you have to kind of feel your way through it and then think about how it felt. It's not like chess where you study a move and you move. There's a lot of like, it's very kinetic. And so he's been doing it for like 4 years. He's like number 1 or 2 in the state of Massachusetts, which listen, there are states where people can vote much higher. But he did it all under his own sail. Like I'm not a pole vaulter. I can barely stand up. So like uh, it's been great. And so, yeah.
It's awesome. Well, Colin, thanks so much for taking the time to walk us through your background story. Obviously, all the great stories at the great companies you've been a part of in the Boston tech scene, and wishing you and the team lots of great success with Ray.
Thanks for having VentureFizz, Keith. It's great to know you over the years. I appreciate you want to have the conversation. I've totally enjoyed it. Thank you so much.